Daf Yomi, Tractate Avodah Zarah, page 72. A, top of the page, with the words Umay lo nitan lehishavon, te'eno b'toras hishavon. And what does it mean that the stolen object is not subject to restitution? It means that it is not subject to the halachot of restitution because it is not technically a theft. Ihachi ema seifa bo chavero naso mimenu nehara aleha b'shtamarei shemishum mitzarei Yisrael and a seifa ma'avid. The Gemara asks, if that is so, say the latter clause of that halachic statement. If another descendant of Noah came and took the stolen item from him, he is also executed for it. Granted, with regard to the first clause, it can be explained that although there is no obligation to return the item, the non-Yehudi is executed because he caused the Yehudi distress. But with regard to the latter clause, what did he do? He did not cause the Yehudi distress. And since the item is worth less than one pruta, one is not obligated to return it unless he stole it from a non-Yehudi. Consequently, the second theft should not be considered a legally significant act. Rather, should one not conclude from it that one pulling an item acquires it in a transaction performed by a non-Yehudi? Accordingly, the actions of both the first and the second non-Yehudis are legally significant, which reminds me, I just read that they eliminated one of the chief of staff of the Houthis, so that's a good thing. Are legally significant act of theft for which they are liable to be executed. The Gemara affirms, conclude from it, that this is so. Ahu gavra de'amale lechavre im izabena la lehara lach mizabena la azazavna li nishtacharine amar Rav Yosef kana kama. The Gemara relates that there was an incident involving a certain man who said to another, "If I sell this land, I will sell it to you." And they performed a formal act of acquisition to ratify the agreement. He went and sold it to another person. Rav Yosef said, the first one has acquired it. Detana namocher yenu lenochli pasak adela shelo madad tamav utarin madad at shelo pasak damav asurin. Abaye said to him, but he did not fix a price with him for it. And from where do you say that wherever the people involved in the transaction did not fix a price, the buyer has not acquired the item, even if they performed a formal act of acquisition? It is from that which we learned in the Mishnah, in the case of a Yehudi who sells his wine to a non-Yehudi, if he fixed the price before he measured the wine into the non-Yehudi's vessel, deriving benefit from the money paid for the wine is permitted. But if the Yehudi measured the wine into the non-Yehudi's vessel, thereby rendering it forbidden, before he fixed a price, the money paid for the wine is forbidden. My havela, kedeka til machumadiye nesach shane. The Gemara asks, what halachic conclusion was reached about this matter? The Gemara interjects what is meant by the question, what halachic conclusion was reached about this matter. The conclusion is, as we have stated, that it is evident from the Mishnah that the acquisition goes into effect only after the price is fixed. The Gemara explains its question. Perhaps due to the stringency of the prohibition of wine used for a libation, the case of the Mishnah is different and is not characteristic of halacha and monetary matters. Tashima, Damar Rav Idi bar Avin, Avodah hava berav Chizda, verav Chizda berav Huna, upashto meyad etna, mashach amra pala vichnisan, לתוך ביתו, בין פסק עד שלא מדד ובין מדד עד שלא פסק לא קנה. ושניהם יכולים לחסל בהם. The Gemara suggests, come here a proof, that an acquisition goes into effect only after the price is fixed. As Rav Idi bar Avin said, there was an incident that came before the school of Rav Chizda, and Rav Chizda brought it before the school of Rav Huna. And Rav Huna resolved it from that which we learned in a Braita. If one bought from another produce that was loaded on the seller's donkeys or carried by his laborers, and the purchaser drew the seller's donkey drivers or laborers laden with produce and brought them into his house, in this case, whether the seller fixed the price before he measured the produce or whether he measured the produce before he fixed the price, the purchaser had not acquired the produce, and both of them, the purchaser or the seller, can retract the transaction as no act of acquisition took place. Perkan v'hichnisan letoch beito פסק עד שלא מדד. אין שניהם יכולים לחזור בהם. מדד עד שלא פסק, שניהם יכולים לחזור בהם. The Braita continues, but if the purchaser unloaded the produce and brought it into his house, this constitutes an act of acquisition, and therefore if he fixed the price before he measured the produce, neither of them can retract, but if he measured the produce before he fixed the price, both of them can retract. This illustrates that even if there was an act of acquisition, they can retract the transaction until the price has been fixed in accordance with the statement of Abaye. Ahu gavra de'amale lechavre im zabenina la leharo bizabenina lach במאה זוזה, אכל זבנה לאיניש אחריני ב120. אמר רב כהנא משקיף לה רב יעקב מנהר פקוד. היי זוזה אנסו, והלכתה כרב יעקב מנהר פקוד. There was a related incident involving a certain man who said to another, if I will desire to sell this land, I will sell it to you for 100 dinars. And they performed an act of acquisition to ratify the agreement. He went and sold it to another person for 120 dinars. Rav Kahana said the first one has acquired it. Rav Yaakov of Nahar Pekod objects to this. Those 20 additional dinars compelled him to sell it to the second purchaser. The Gemara concludes, and the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rav Yaakov of Nahar Pekod. Amar le kiddushay mi b'telata afilu tremi goy telata kiddushay b'telata amar b'telata kishay b'telata. If the seller said to the purchaser, I will sell you this merchandise as it is assessed by 3 people, even if 2 out of the 3 agreed to a certain assessment, the seller must accept this price. If he said, I will sell you this merchandise in accordance with the price that is stated by 3 people, he is not held to their assessment, unless it is stated by all three. If he said, as it is assessed by 4 people, he is not held to their assessment unless it is stated by all 4. And all the more so in a case where he said to him in accordance with the price that is stated by 4 people. Amar le ki shari b'telada v'ato telada v'shamua v'amar leidach leito telada achrein edikim lehu tefe amar baba dinahu b'dakev matkif l'Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yehoshua mimai tahani kim lehu tefe Dilma hane kim lehu tefe. Hilchata k'Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yehoshua. If the seller said to the buyer, I will sell you this merchandise as it is assessed by 3 people, and 3 people came and assessed it, and the other one, the purchaser said, let 3 other people who are more proficient in their assessment come and assess the merchandise. Rav Papa said the halacha is that he can prevent the price from being set until more proficient people assess the merchandise. Rav Huna, son of Rav Yehoshua, objects to this. From where can he know that those other 3 are more proficient in their assessment? Perhaps the first 3 are more proficient. The Gemara concludes, and the halacha is in accordance with the opinion of Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua. And now we start a new Mishnah. We start on a Mishnah. Noto es המשפך ומדד לתוך צלוחיתו שנוכריה בחוזר ולתוך צלוחתו של ישראל אם יש פה מהכבש יין אסור המיירה בקניית כלי אל שאירה ממנו מותר ואת שאירה לתוך אסור. In a case where a Jew took a funnel and measured wine into a non-Yehudi's jug, and then measured wine with the same funnel into a Yehudi's jug, if there is a remnant of wine left in the funnel, the wine measured into the Yehudi's jug is forbidden, and some of the wine that was measured into the non-Yehudi's jug is mixed in it. In the case of one who pours wine from one vessel into another vessel, the wine left in the vessel from which he poured is permitted, but the wine in the vessel into which he poured is forbidden. That's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara. Tanan hasamanitzok Ketafreis ומש כתופח אינו חיבור לא לטומאה ולא לטהרה יש בורן חיבור לטומאה ולטהרה. Okay, we learned in a Mishnah elsewhere in Taharot 8:9, a stream of water and water descending an incline and liquid that rendered an item moist do not constitute a connection between liquids, neither with regard to ritual impurity nor with regard to purity. These liquids do not constitute a connection that transmits impurity. For example, if impure water is in one place and becomes attached to water above it, the water above is not considered attached to the impure water and not rendered impure. They also do not constitute a connection for purification. For example, if 2 collections of water are attached via the pouring of a stream, they do not join together to form the amount of water necessary to form a valid ritual bath, through which people and items can become ritually pure. A pond constitutes a connection between liquids in regard to impurity and with regard to purity. Amar Huna nitzok v'katafreis Rav Huna says a stream of water and water descending an incline and liquid that rendered an item moist constitute a connection with regard to the matter of wine used for a libation. Amar le Rab Nachman Rav Huna mino laho ile mitnan anitzot כתפריס ומש כתובח אינו חיבור לא לטומאה ולא לטהרה לטומאה ולטהרה הוא דלא הווה חיבור לעניין יהיה נסך הווה חיבור המה ספר האש בורן חיבור לטומאה ולטהרה לטומאה וטהרה הוא להווה חיבור. לעניין נסח לא הווה חיבור, אלא בהה לקה למשמע מינה. Rav Nachman said to Rav Huna, from where do you derive this? If we say it's derived from that which we learned in the Mishnah, a stream and water descending an incline, and liquid that rendered an item moist do not constitute a connection between liquids, neither with regard to impurity nor with regard to purity, and it is inferred that it is with regard to impurity, with regard to impurity and with regard to purity, that it does not constitute a connection, but with regard to wine, used for elevation, it does not constitute a connection, then say the latter clause. Upon constituting a connection between liquids, with regard to impurity and with regard to purity, it can be inferred from here that with regard to impurity and with regard to purity, with regard to impurity and with regard to purity, it is a connection. With regard to wine used for elevation, it is not a connection. Contrary to the halacha inferred from the former clause, rather clearly no inference is to be learned from this Mishnah. Tanam. We learned in the Mishnah, the Gemara attempts to bring proof for Rav Huna's opinion from that which we learned in the Mishnah. Not tell us. We learned in a Mishnah that in the case where a Yehudi took a funnel and measured wine into a non-Yehudi's jug, and then measured wine with the same funnel into a Yehudi's jug, now we're turning to 72b on the top of the page. Top of the page, we shall return after a brief break, intermission, break, whatever. Continuing now on 72b on the top of the page with the words Im yesh bo akevet yain asur ha akevet yain b'mai ka mistadra lav b'nitzok shma mina nitzok chibur. If there is a remnant of wine left in the funnel, it is rendered forbidden. In what manner is this remnant of wine rendered forbidden? Is it not by the stream of wine going down from the funnel into the Gentile's vessel, thereby connecting the Gentile's vessel and the funnel and rendering the wine in the funnel forbidden? Conclude from it that a stream constitutes a connection. Tani Rabbi Chia shepichastu tzilojito. Sounds a little Spanish. Tzilojito. Tzilojizo. Avalo pisachtu pichastu tzilojito. Mai. Lo tishpot inazrena chidu. Lo pichastu tzilojito. Tifshot lach de'asur nitzokti bai. Rab Chia teaches that the Mishnah is referring to a situation where the wine in the non-Yehudi's jug rose and reached the funnel. The Gemara infers, but in a case where the wine in the jug did not rise and reach the funnel, what is the halacha? It is not forbidden. Therefore, resolve the dilemma and conclude that a stream is not a connection. The Gemara rejects this inference. No, Rabbi Chia means to say that in a case where the wine in the jug rose and reached the funnel, you can resolve the dilemma and conclude that it is forbidden, but with regard to a stream, the dilemma remains unresolved. The dilemma remains unresolved, but they don't have a teku. Sometimes you have unresolved dilemmas that doesn't say teku. I wonder why. Tashima hama v'chli The Gemara suggests, come and hear a proof from the second topic discussed in the Mishnah. In the case of one who pours wine from one vessel into another vessel, the wine left in the vessel from which he poured is permitted. The Gemara infers, but the stream of wine between the two vessels is forbidden. Conclude from it that a stream constitutes a connection. Yinitzok chibo afilu degabe demananavi litzal halokashia dekamikatef katofe Mikol makom nitzach bo. The Gemara raises an objection to this proof. If a stream constitutes a connection, even the wine inside the vessel being poured from should also be forbidden. The Gemara responds to this objection. This is not difficult. It is the case where the one pouring the wine interrupts the flow. So the reason the wine in the vessel being poured from is permitted is that the stream is interrupted. But in any case, a stream is considered a connection. The Gemara rejects the proof. According to your reasoning, say that there is an inference from the latter clause of the Mishnah. It is the wine in the vessel into which he poured that is forbidden due to the forbidden remedy to the wine in the funnel. But by inference, a stream of wine between the two vessels is permitted, contrary to the conclusion from the previous case. Rather, no inference is to be learned from this Mishnah. Tashima. The Gemara suggests, coming here, another proof from a right in the case of one who pours wine from a barrel into a wine cistern containing forbidden wine. The stream of wine coming from the rim of the barrel downward is rendered forbidden. Evidently, a stream constitutes a connection. Rav Sheshet interpreted this Braita as referring to a non-Yehudi pouring the wine from the barrel into the cistern, and the wine streaming out of the barrel is rendered forbidden because it came from the non-Yehudi's force, meaning the stream was powered by the non-Yehudi's action. If the non-Yehudi moves the wine is forbidden, even if the non-Yehudi did not touch it. The stream is not rendered forbidden by virtue of its connection to the wine in the cistern. The brother? No, the cistern. Oh, goya afilu gava dechabita na mitzah koach te goy min rabbanon hu de asir hauna v'glida gazo berabbanan nahu li diligavai lo gazro rabbanan. The Gemara raised an objection to this interpretation. If the reference is to a non-Yehudi who pours the wine, even the wine inside the barrel is rendered forbidden, because the non-Yehudi is also powering the movement of the barrel itself. The Gemara responds to this objection. The halakha that a non-Yehudi's force renders wine forbidden is by rabbinic law. With regard to the wine that is poured out of the barrel, the sages decreed that it is forbidden. But with regard to the wine that remains inside the barrel, the sages did not decree that it is forbidden. Amar lahu Rav Chizda lihanu seviyata ki chaylitu nichamil goyim katve, in practice is kativu katofe inami, in parentheses nafsi, in brackets nafitzu nafotzi. Amar lahu Rav lehancho shifachoi ki shafachitu chamra lo nikrav koin usam yalaychu dema mishtelitu v'shadaitu la le ale v'kaate v'kocho v'asyo. The Gemara relates accounts of how the sages ruled connecting this matter. Chizah said to certain wine retailers, when you measure wine for non-Yehudis, pour with interruptions rather than in a smooth, steady stream, or toss it out in a single action that does not create a steady stream. Rava said to certain wine pourers, when you pour wine, do not let a non-Yehudi approach to help you, lest you let your guard down and rest the vessel in the non-Yehudi's hands, and the wine will emerge due to his force and will be rendered forbidden. Ahu gavdas ikamra begishta ubat gishta ata goy anach yedei gishta asrera v'chuli chamra. The Gemara relates that there was an incident involving a certain man who siphoned wine from a barrel with a large tube and a small tube. A non-Yehudi came and rested his hand upon the large tube. Rava deemed the entire quantity of wine forbidden, including the wine that was still in the barrel. Amr le Rava Amri le Rav Bar Matna Rava Amri le Ravin Rava Bemai Benitzok Shavat Mina Nitzok Chibo Shani Hatam Nikuli Chamra Gishta Vat Gishta Garir. Rav Papa said to Rava, and some say it was Rav Bar Matna who says to Rava, and some say it was Ravina who said it to Rava. But by what mechanism was the wine rendered forbidden? Was it by the stream of wine that went through the large tube, which was rendered forbidden by the contact of the non-Yehudi, and the rest of the barrel was rendered forbidden by the correction with that stream? Should one conclude from this ruling that a stream constitutes a connection? Rava rejects his inference. It is different there, as all of the wine in the barrel is drawn toward the large tube and the small tube, and so it is as though the non-Yehudi had touched all the wine in the barrel. Amr Marzutra Bered Rav Nachman Kenish Kenin Shari Behani Mili Dikadim Pesak Israel Aval Gadam Pesak Kohen Lo Rabba Barafuna Ikla Libe Reish Galuta Sheralahu Limishte Beknish Kenin. Marzutra, son of Nachman, says for a Yehudi and a non-Yehudi to drink simultaneously from a vessel with tubes for several people to drink from Kanish Kanin is permitted. And this statement applies only in a case where the Yehudi stops drinking first, before the non-Yehudi. But if the non-Yehudi stops drinking first, it does not apply and the wine is forbidden, as wine from the non-Yehudi's mouth returns to the vessel and renders all of the wine forbidden. Rabba Baravuna happened to come to the house of the exarch, and he permitted them to drink from a Kanishkanin together with non-Yehudim.